Good evening, my beautiful kitties. I'm just playing with my tarot cards this evening. You know, I used to give readings once upon a time, but, well, there was no future in it. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't resist a cheesy joke or two. Ooh, I just picked the devil. And if you knew what question I had asked, you would know that's a good thing. Oh, yes, I'm forgetting. You want your first story, don't you? Let's see. What will the tarot cards show me about this next story? Oh, we have a picture of a tree here. Yes, this next story is about a ghost that lived in a tree.
It is 1999, and my mother is pregnant with her fourth child, and growing ever more sick as the pregnancy went on. She was told repeatedly to abort all of her children, of which she did not, each time narrowly living through giving birth. So her and my father decided it was time to buy a house, as they were worried that she would pass and our family would have nothing in the coming 9 months. Luckily, there were no complications and my youngest sister is born. And there are 2 older than me, and her being the youngest, we had almost 2 years between our ages. So during this time, everything's fairly okay. You know, Mom gets better, Dad finds an okay job, and everything, seems all right. The house we moved into was built on 5 acres of land, way out in the sticks. So plenty of room, and having been built in 1978, it was fairly new and undeveloped. It was meant to be a hunting cabin. It had a front and back porch, and depending on how you entered, you were either in the kitchen or living room. The only way connecting them was a short hallway, and on one side of the living room was my siblings and I's room, and the other was in the hall across from the bathroom, which my parents slept in. Well, this is important to the story, so it's worth noting. So little things happen here and there in the house, and mostly it was just a really unsettling feeling. My parents fought more than they had, but everyone was okay. Seeing as I was a child, I cannot say for sure when it all started, but I can recount what I've experienced. I just know at first it was nightmares. I had them the worst, as far back as I can remember. I was about 2 years old when I had started asking my parents about the man who lived in the tree outside their window. They took it as an imaginary friend. Sometimes I would be in our room and playing and start talking with this man. And as the years passed, we moved into the room that once was my parents' after they converted the porch connected to the living room into a new bedroom. And my eldest sister lived in there, while the second eldest took the top bunk, and my younger sister and I shared the bottom bunk in the big room across from the bathroom. So the house seemed to have changeable moods, all of its own. You could be having a great day, walk in the house, and instantly feel defeated or angry. My parents have never fought like they did in that house. My mom had never acted like that. Whatever was there fed on her more than us. So the hallway outside our bedroom was so creaky. You knew right where someone was and who by the footsteps. My little sister and I would leave the door open to the bathroom and the bedroom so that the light would shine into the room as sort of a night light. Well, one night, we started hearing people walking around outside our bedroom door. And, it would wake us up. Eventually, we saw a man standing there in the hallway. We were scared of him, and we would hide under the blanket until he was gone. We complained about him so much that my dad started closing our bedroom door and making us sleep in complete darkness so that we wouldn't see anything, and started the phrase, "Turn over, face the wall, and go to sleep." The man taught us that if we turned over, he would spank us. And eventually, we didn't look at the things we heard in the night. Some mornings we would wake up to our room completely overturned, and our parents pissed at us for making a mess. By the time I was 5, my imaginary friend had not left, and now my parents had moved our bed against the window so that at night I could see up into the tree where he lived. I took top bunk, my younger sister get in the bottom, and my older moved into the porch room. It's around this time where my memory gets very cloudy. My imaginary friend started teaching me a game where I would choke my sister. During this time, I just remember being filled with an unquenchable hatred for her and for my family. My mom during this time had separate and chilling encounters in the house, and things went from nightmares, footsteps, and the occasional missing thing to full-blown terrifying. My mom had me prayed over by the church twice, and the choking stopped, and I seemed to forget entirely about the whole thing for a number of weeks, until I started asking where my friend went. To this, my mom would never reply. When I would ask her about choking my sister and my friend who taught me the game, she would insist it was my cousin who taught me it, and that nothing is wrong with this house. During this time, my mom starts to spiral downwards. She gets so bad that one day she overdoses on pills and things get even worse. She tells us in later years the shadow man in the closet that we used to play with had told her to take all the sleeping pills, which is why they had us moved out of that room. So my mom was seeing him too. Over the 13 years we lived in the house, she also would start getting worse, as we would call it, and be paranoid and think my dad was out to get her. I'm 6 during this time, and no one tells me what happened to my mother. At one point, I looked her dead in the face and said, "Do mommies die when they don't eat anything but pills?" To this day, I don't remember why I said it. I had no concept of death. She was always in the hospital, but Dad told us she went to our grandma's house. As I continued to grow up in that house, more and more things began happening. It was truly terrifying. My sisters and I used to wake up at night and hear what sounded like the heaviest thing on earth running around the house. First slowly, then faster and faster and faster and faster. It was terrifying, and it occurred at least once a month, no matter what room you were in. We used to hang dry our towels in the bathroom, and one day while doing laundry, the towels were put up to dry and we were folding, and when we returned for the next load to fold, the towel had dried into a perfect form of a human face. Almost as if something had been standing there watching us do laundry. After that, we only hung clothing to dry outside. I had many times when I would hear the voice of my parents call for me, or my sisters, who didn't even live with us anymore. Normally, they would call me inside the house or into the woods. Each time, I never found anyone, so I started ignoring it. When remodeling the house, we tore up the floor of the living room, which had platform steps that led into kind of a carpeted area where our living room was. The idea was to open up the space. Well, we found a trap door right under where they had built the steps. We had no idea it was there. When you opened it, there were stairs leading to a basement under the house. We were never allowed down there. Mom and Dad sealed that thing shut and built over it. We asked and asked about it, but all they said was to never go in there. When I moved into the porch room, my nightmares got worse and worse. I would stay up as long as possible, to not dream. I slept, walked most nights, and would wake up crying in a different room from horrible dreams about being tormented by this evil, unseeable thing. It would choke me and throw me and hit me and scratch me, etc. I had at one point kicked a hole into the wall in my sleep, struggling with it. I also started experiencing sleep paralysis. My younger sister and I spent the most time in the house, besides my mom and dad. My dad, who was very skeptical, used escapism. He would pretend nothing was happening. The reason my family stayed living there so long was we were very poor. And my dad was lucky to make the payments on the house, as he started a better paid job. He signed on for a 30-year mortgage, and there was no leaving. Although when the house would get to be too much, he would pack us up and we would live at the beach for a few days at a time. My younger sister and I have compared stories a lot, more than the rest of my siblings. She would dream about a lot of the same things I did. My older sister and her husband prayed over a cloth and anointed it and put it over her doorway to try to help her. She too experienced the voices calling for her, seemingly from people she knew and trusted. She often saw the man in the hallway and faces in the window of the room we slept in. She corroborated that she heard the running outside, the awful, wall-shaking, thunderous running. I cannot begin to describe the amount of fear we had living in that house. My mom believes talking about it will make it worse, so she doesn't say as much as she can, but did tell me about some of the things that happened to her. I never got to see what was in the basement. Years later, as an adult, my sister and I went back one day, but we could never muster the courage to stay the night or to tear up the floor. We had to break in a way we knew from being children because my parents padlocked the place and nailed the windows shut. I would like to add, when we moved, my parents literally said, "We might move." And 2 days later, we packed an overnight bag and we were gone. We only went back one time and loaded up only essentials and left everything else we owned. I believe something terrified them and they decided to leave immediately.
So I lived in a pretty nice area with my husband and some family friends. We lived there for a few years with nothing bad happening around us. It felt like a very safe neighbourhood. Now for context, I'm a very short white female and I'm considered disabled even though I look fine. But I could never really beat anyone up since my disability has limited my activity severely. Anyway, this happened about a year ago before we moved. I had some stories pop up on Facebook of some traffickers that were targeting women and children at a local store that we lived right behind. I was freaked out, and so I made a point not to go to the store without my husband. I still got the news articles about people being followed and grabbed and kidnapped from the store, but I felt pretty safe as long as I didn't go anywhere without my husband. I was going to work one day. I work about 15 minutes away from our house. It was a call centre, kind of in the middle of nowhere. There were fields every which way. I worked the afternoon shift and was one of the last people to leave at night. I had to stop and get gas and was a little freaked out because I was scared to go anywhere without my husband. But I wasn't going to make it to work and back home, so I had no choice.
I stopped at the station and was slightly relieved that it was super busy. I got out and started pumping my gas when this big van pulled up in the spot next to mine. A guy got out and started pumping his own gas. Then he walked around the pump and got in between my car and me. He smiled and said, "Wow, your car is so clean. How'd you get it so clean?" I was flabbergasted at this question. My car was a mess. It was dirty with bugs and stuff on it. "Why don't you show me how you get it so clean?" He reached out to touch me, but I jerked back. Another car pulled up behind me and a guy got out. I think he freaked the other guy out because he walked back to his van. I quickly finished pumping my gas and got into my car, locked the doors and sped away. A few minutes later, I look out of my window and the van is behind me, riding my bumper pretty much. I could see the guy smiling and laughing with some other guy. I was pretty freaked out, but figured he was just going to the freeway. We passed the freeway, but he kept following me. Now I was very freaked out. The only place on the road now is my work. I called my husband, but he didn't answer since he was at work. I was freaking out, so I picked up speed and continued on. I kept looking back, and the van was still there, just a little further back. I made it to work. It was a large building with lots of cars in the parking lot. I parked right in front of the doors in a handicap spot and ran into the doors. I looked back through the locked doors and I saw the guy had stopped in front looking pissed. I ran up to my department and went right up to a friend who was ex-military. He carried multiple guns on him at all times. I cried as I told him what happened. I got to work and was still freaked out all day. We closed and I was walking to my car. I peeked out the windows and I saw the white van. I couldn't see anyone in there and I wasn't even sure it was the same van. I ran back to my department and told my friend what was going on. He pulled out his gun and walked me outside. The van had now moved to the right behind my car. My friend walked me to his car and we got in and he drove me right up to my car. He then followed me all the way home and sat outside until I was inside my house. I could see the van following us, but once we got past the freeway, he turned into it. The next afternoon on my way to work, I passed the gas station and the van pulled out. Again, they followed me to work, but then turned away once I got to the parking lot. This went on for about a week. They would follow me to work, leave, then be outside when I was leaving, and my friend would walk out. My buddy told me they were probably trying to learn my schedule so they could figure out a time to jump me. He insisted I take one of his guns just in case he wasn't there at work to walk me out. I didn't want it though, as I was afraid that if I had it, then I would get pulled over or something and get in trouble for having a gun not in my name and not having a permit for it. I was telling my husband that evening about this van still following me, and he suggested that I should call the cops and let them know. I honestly don't know why I didn't think of that. So the next morning, when I was about to get ready for work, I called. I told them everything. Then I left for work. Just like clockwork, the van pulled out of the gas station and started following me. We were on the long stretch of road that nothing was on when I spotted a car parked off the side of the road. I passed, and then the car passed and the lights came on. The van was pulled over. I later found out that the men following me had several warrants for rape and attempted kidnapping. The back of the van had knives, ropes, gloves, masks, chloroform, and some other sketchy crap in it. The cops believed that I was going to be the next target. When I got to work, my friend wasn't there. He was sick. I'm glad I called the cops that morning, because I don't think I would have made it home if he wasn't there to walk me out.
So for context, I'm a 22-year-old male and I live in a large city in the Midwest. Now, I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. I drive for other similar companies, but that's beside the point. I have many horror stories from those as well, but I'll tell those another time. It was Christmas Eve 2020. I was running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mom's with my new baby and wife in tow. Nothing special going on for the night, just the usual. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kind of lower income apartment complex. No big deal. I arrive and I find my passenger. He has all his belongings. Several boxes of stuff. Nothing too much. Now my car is a 2006 Chevy Impala, so it's not too big. We get all his stuff loaded up, barely, and are on our way. During the ride, he's crying, saying his girlfriend was cheating on him and he had walked in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease, so I was taking him to a hotel. In my city, we have a street that's very well known for having vices. Hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons, and shady motels. The works. We get to the motel. He asked me to wait for him to check in and get his key. No problem, man, I say. I'll confess, I break the rules a little when it comes to Lyft. I have a gun hidden in a concealed carry holster secured to the underside of my driver's seat for protection. This is America, after all. Real reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I've had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as people have tried to fight me, rob me, and all kinds of other stuff. But like I said, another time. This motel was on the street I mentioned before. Homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that still had a needle in his arm, passed out against the building, and I'm a big fan of true crime and horror narration, so I'm on edge. He gets his key. The whole motel is ground level, so to help the guy out, I drive to his door. As I mentioned before, he had a lot of stuff, so I started to help him unload his stuff. While on my second trip getting things, I saw a guy come out of the room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came up to the room I was next to, not my passenger's room, the one I was standing by, and one of the ladies pounded on the door and then opened it. That's when I saw the guy raise a fucking shotgun up out of his long coat and storm into the room, and the two ladies followed him, slamming the door behind them. I followed, and I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for the shots to ring out. Out of nowhere, my passenger came up behind me and said, "I can take this, man. Go ahead and take off. Have a Merry Christmas." And then he gave me a cash tip. I didn't even notice he took the boxes out of my hands or slid me a $5 bill in my pocket. I was frozen. I knew what may have been going on in that room. I had to leave or at least get to where I could get my gun. I know that guy and both ladies saw me, and I know they knew I saw the gun. I had to get out of there. No witnesses. I got in my car and sped away quickly. I got a block or so away and called the cops. I have every detail for them. After I got off the phone with the police, I signed out a Lyft. I hadn't made much money, but I was done for the night. I got a call later that night that the cops had investigated. They never found the gunman or the woman. They never answered the door I saw them come out of. And the occupants of the room they went into said nothing had happened, and I was full of shit. Well, I know what I saw. So, to the gunman I saw with the shotgun, who I'm sure was making a statement to somebody about a debt, let's not meet again.
A few years back, my mum was coming home after spending the afternoon at my auntie's, cousins and their kids. When she got home, Mum told my husband and I about the incident she experienced waiting for a bus. We come from a family of healers and sensitives, so I've had paranormal and supernatural experiences all my life, as has the rest of my family. My mum, although slightly sceptical and a bit reluctant to embrace the gifts which our ancestors have passed down to us, has had her fair share of unexplained events in her own life. She told us that while she was waiting for the bus, suddenly she saw movement from the corner of her eye. Across the road, she saw 3 young people. In usual circumstances, this wouldn't be out of the ordinary at all, as the shops are a regular meeting place for all the local teenagers. However, there was something slightly odd with these young people. Mum said they were dressed in the period of the 70s, when my mum was a young teenager. People were milling about them, very near them, and no one was acknowledging them, their existence totally overlooking their presence, as if they were invisible to passers-by. Mum was distracted for a brief moment, and when she looked back again, where the mysterious youths had been, they were gone. She even watched the only open shop, as she thought they might have gone in. She waited until her bus came, 20 minutes, but they didn't come out. There was nowhere else they could have gone in the time my mum wasn't watching them. Mum said the most unsettling thing about it was the normality of the three figures and the fact that she was apparently the only one to see them. This story happened in the New Year's Eve of 2010. I'm visiting my friends in our city before me and my family start our New Year's Eve celebration, when suddenly I receive a phone call from my uncle. My uncle asked me if I can visit them before our New Year's Eve celebration starts. My uncle lives in the countryside of my city. I said yes, and I asked my friend if she could come with me. My friend said yes, so we travel outside of our city around 9:30 p.m. on my motorbike. We arrived at my uncle's house at 10 p.m. My uncle is very happy to see us. We talk, we eat and drink. But I don't drink that much because I'm going to drive back home. Me and my friend spend a good amount of time there when I notice that it's already 11:30 p.m. So we've got 30 minutes to get back to our city. So we tell my uncle that we are going home and we start travelling back home. But we've only got 30 minutes before the new year kicks in. So me and my friend decided to change route. I knew a shortcut road in that area, but we have to travel past the rice field. I know that road, but I don't travel there at night because it's pretty sketchy. There's no houses near that area, but me and my friend don't have a choice that time, so we chose that shortcut road. When we were travelling on that stretch of road, I noticed my friend looking in the middle of the rice field and starts shaking. So I asked my friend what happened, and my friend answered in a trembling voice, "What's that thing in the middle of the rice field?" When I saw something, but my brain can't make it out. What I can see doesn't seem to make any sense. It looks like a walking tree. Then I start to question myself. A moving tree. Because that thing is moving. It looks like it's moving. So I stop my motorbike to take a closer look at that thing or whatever it is. Then I was shocked, scared, and trembling in fear. When I looked in the middle of the rice field, I saw a big horse. Tall as a tree. But this horse is not walking on 4 legs. It's walking on 2 legs, with hands like humans. The creature is looking in the sky in the direction of the fireworks, so I start my motorbike and just hit the gas on it. And me and my friend are so scared, we have to get out of that place. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind hits us. We almost fell to the ground, then my motorbike stopped working. I tried to start it up a couple of times, but not starting. We're in the city, so I decided to leave my motorbike at the auto repair shop because it's New Year's Eve. No one there is going to repair it. So we went home that night. In the morning, I came back to the auto repair shop for my motorbike, but the mechanic asked me what happened to it, and I answered, "Why? What's the problem with it?" The mechanic told me that I need to pay a large amount of money to repair the bike that was hit by lightning. He told me that all my motorbike's electrical parts are burned and needed to be replaced, and he showed me all of it. And again, I felt scared. Because me and my friend were sitting on that motorbike the whole time. There's no way it was hit by lightning. Until this day, I can't explain what I saw and what happened to my bike that night. But whatever it is, one thing is for sure. The thing that I saw in the rice field that New Year's Eve is not human.
Reggie, I can't move. Ugh. Reggie's decided to lay on top of me. Normally, this would be fine with a regular cat, but being a full-size puma, I'm feeling a little short of air. Oh, Reggie, off! Reggie, you're going to suffocate Mommy! Reggie? Who's that outside the door? It sounds like a tasty Jehovah's Witness. That did the trick. Well, darlings, I'll see you all in my little house of horrors. Same time next week. Sleep well.